We want to know, so make sure you log onto our X, Facebook, Instagram, Rumble, YouTube. We're live on all of those platforms, and give us a shout out. Tell us what the weather is like where you are. Tell us what questions you have, because not only is it going to be Kevin and I talking about things and answering
that'd be boring
your questions.
enough.
That would be super boring. So we had to bring in the big guns. Of course, we've got Hurricane Hunter extraordinaire, Josh Morgerman. Good morning, Josh. How you doing today?
Real good. Nice to be with you both, as always.
You too. And so people can send over their tropical questions because you've got a lot going on. The Atlantic is heating up, so we're going to be talking about Tropical Storm Erin.
Yeah, Erin's going to be all the headlines. I thought about making graphics just about the 0%ers that we've got out in the Gulf and the North Atlantic, but didn't mess with you this morning there, Josh.
Yeah, no, it's really Erin is definitely stealing the headlines. It's sucking up all the oxygen in the room, and I think that's going to be the steak that we're going to dine on this morning.
Well, and honestly, for what, like the next week or so? Because that's the hard part with these transatlantic systems. You see them, you watch them form, you pore over the data. We only have like 3 minutes before we go live on air, so everybody should turn on their TVs and go to those platforms so you can watch what we're talking about as we go live at the top of the hour. But Josh, quickly, do you ever get model fatigue? Do you ever just get like tired of looking and poring over the same system and the same data, waiting for something to change?
Don't get me started on this topic. This is not a 3-minute topic.
Again, I only have 3 minutes.
Our session's
Josh, so
3 minutes
let's
long
go.
here.
So give me the Reader's Digest.
It is absolutely, the systems that come off Africa and come all the way across the US, they're like these Victorian novels. They just go on forever. They take forever to get through. And usually, they curve harmlessly out to sea. But some of the greatest hurricanes in American history were these African systems that took 10 days or more to get across the ocean. So we always got to watch them, even though, yes, fatigue is a big part of it.
Yeah, and I think, too, that speaks to how we communicate the threats to the public, because by the time it's actually there, by the time they actually start to feel the impacts, they're like, yeah, whatever, I've been hearing about this for a week. So that's one of the struggles from our side, is keeping people coming back for more information as it does change, because when big things happen, we need people to know about them.
Absolutely. It is one of the challenges with these storms is people just get sick of hearing about them. And I know on social media in particular, I try to kind of pace myself a little bit and pace my followers so that they're not just completely burned out by the time this thing actually becomes a threat and gets near land masses, which is still a good 5 days away at least.
Especially when we have so much of the season left too. If we're already getting fatigued on this first transatlantic storm, then we got a long way to go. But Josh, here in about a minute, we're going to be going live on all of our on-air platforms. If you're not quite sure how to join us, we'll have a QR code that you can take a picture of and turn on that TV, turn it on our app. You can download it on Apple and Android devices. Maybe you're jumping on the train for your morning commute. Just throw it on your cell phone, watch that live feed, and take us with you wherever you're going. And Kevin, we're not just talking tropics, we're talking top stories too.
We've got all sorts of things to talk about this morning. We've had the summer of flooding just doesn't want to seem to back off for whatever reason.
Yeah,
here. We'll
speaking
try to
of
get into
epic
that.
poems and Victorian novels.
My goodness, we've got way too much rainfall in way too many places here. We'll talk about that. Let us know, like we mentioned, what the weather's doing where you're at. Got to do that on social media as well. But if you just want to watch us, follow along with us, download our app right there. Scan the QR code.
Roku, Apple TV, Vizio, Samsung Plus. Here in about 10 seconds, we're going to be live. So stay with us here on social media as well, and leave us all of your comments. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here on Weather Nation. Not only are we live on your favorite platform, but we are also live on Weather Nation on social media. So make sure you join us there and send us all your questions, comments, concerns about the top stories. And Kevin, we've got a lot to talk about today.
Oh yeah, and it's going to be all about Erin here. Hopefully you're strapped in for some tropical talks here. Of course, we couldn't do it without our favorite hurricane hunter out there, though.
And that's Josh Morgerman. Josh is joining us live this morning. Josh, how is it going now that we have one of these big, potentially blockbuster storms? We've got a long way to go on this one, but start off by telling us about what you're seeing with Erin right now.
Yeah, just like clockwork, just on schedule. We always say that hurricane season really starts to kick up in the kind of like just around August 10th, and there we have it. We got a pretty like active weather map. Erin, of course, is the big story. Big picture, big headline is the models, all of the computer models, whether it's the GFS, whether it's the Euro, whether it's the deterministic models or the ensemble models, pretty much everything now, the majority of them are showing the storm, the eventual hurricane, staying offshore and avoiding major land masses. It looks like right now the consensus is that this thing is going to kind of field goal between all of them. So it's going to stay north of the Caribbean islands, east of the Bahamas, between the U.S. and Bermuda, and then hopefully south of Atlantic Canada. That's what the models are showing now. But as we always say, the chessboard can evolve. So no one's out of the woods. Everyone's got to watch this thing. But the consensus right now with the models is something that hopefully avoids land masses. Hopefully.
And I want to show and talk about the intensity forecast specifically first, because we've got still a lot of Saharan dust out there. And as I put this forecast in motion, you can see it's kind of dodging and bobbing and weaving in between these dust plumes. And dry air is one of the things that right now has given it a very ragged appearance, and it just really hasn't had a chance to get itself together. But it looks like as we start to see in that later part of its life cycle towards the weekend, like you were mentioning, Josh, as it's kind of navigating through the islands, that's when we could start to see it overcoming that dry air. And that's when it's going to start to tap into those really warm sea surface temperatures as well.
Absolutely. Erin is struggling right now. I mean, there's no other way to slice it. And what's so interesting is it came off of Africa and it was this very impressive looking wave when it was around the Cape Verde Islands and everything. It looked like, wow, it almost looked like a hurricane. And then it seemed as soon as they named it Erin, it just like collapsed. I mean, yesterday, there was like no convection with the thing. It looked like it was on death's door. It's looking a little better today. But Carissa, as you said, it's moving into a more favorable area. It's going to get into warmer sea surface temperatures. It's going to get into a moisture environment. And then we should see this thing really take off. It seems very likely, based on the computer modeling, that this thing is going to be the first Atlantic hurricane of the year, and very likely a major. That's what the Hurricane Center is saying, that this thing's going to be a solid red meat hurricane in a few days.
And likely a major hurricane at that, probably Cat 3 status as we head into the weekend, 100 plus mile per hour by Saturday. It's all about where does this go at that point in time. And unfortunately, last week we talked about how the road sign, as we look at computer models and they're farther out, they're very blurry, and we won't really get that clear picture until we get closer. So let's talk about where this is going and what influences that this system will have on it as it gets closer to Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and the continental U.S.
Right. So the main factor is ridging to the north. There's high pressure system to the north, and that's keeping this thing on a westerly track because it sort of blocks the storm. Hurricanes have a natural tendency, they want to move north. They want to move toward the poles, okay? But if there's ridging above it, it can't do that, and it'll continue west. And if there's ridging all the way across the Atlantic, then you can have hurricanes that get into the Gulf, even hit places like Texas. With this one, it looks like the computer models are showing that there's going to be a break in that ridge, kind of around where Bermuda is, around 65 degrees west. And that's going to hopefully allow Erin to kind of take that escape route, get in that opening and turn more north. And like I said, hopefully field goaling between the United States and Bermuda, hopefully, if that break in the ridge happens as it's modeled right now, but we're not assured of that.
Yeah, because we have to watch those models. We've got time, Kevin, before those come in. Any tropical questions coming in from online before? We're going to get to Tracy Anthony with a look at radar in just a second. So stay with us on that. What are people saying on social this morning, Kevin?
Yeah, not quite yet. We're all just kind of meeting and greeting here on the various social media platforms as we get into this morning. As always, whether it's you're watching us on YouTube or X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, holler at us. I'll try to relay some of these questions along. Let us know where you're at too. That helps us, kind of personalize some of these questions.
And we've got our meteorologists on there as well answering those questions. And speaking of good mornings and pleasantries, let's bring in meteorologist Tracy Anthony. Tracy, what are you tracking on Viper to start off the day? What do people need to know as they walk out the door?
We have a cold front that's working across the East Coast. So it pushed across the Great Lakes throughout the overnight. Now we're seeing some rain showers and storms across the Northeast. The tail end of this boundary is impacting areas like Middle Tennessee, East Tennessee, and we've had some major flooding concerns. So I'll be talking about that. And we're also talking about some Gulf moisture. So we'll kind of hit all those hot spots in just a couple minutes, and I'll break it down in more detail.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Tracy. We'll be checking in for that broader look because there were several interstates underwater. Kevin, yesterday evening, the summer of flooding, like you said, continues. But we also have to talk a lot more about tropical, say it 10 times fast.
Yeah, Tropical Storm Erin, Tropical Storm Erin, Tropical Storm Erin.
Get used to the name because this one is marching across the Atlantic. And we just broke down the forecast talking about intensity and steering and where this is going with Josh Morgerman. We have so much more to talk about with him. So you got to stay with us. Join us on our social media platforms. We're going to stay live there where you can ask all of those questions. So stick with us here on Weather Nation. Right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here on social media and sticking with us. Again, your favorite platform to talk to our meteorologists, talk to me, talk to Kevin, and of course, ask all those tropical questions because it's August and we're very much feeling it.
I'm sure you got a couple of questions out there. It's never too late. There's no bad questions out there. As always, bonus points if there's memes involved. Of course, I know that's
just
a
Kevin.
lot to ask, but if I'm moderating here, love me a good meme.
You want a good meme. You want a good thing to start your day and put a smile on your face. And I actually do have a question, and this one is for Josh Morgerman at DNC Freak 250. Wants to know, Josh, is it early for a major hurricane in the Atlantic? I saw someone say that. Climatologically, you're my guy, Josh. Is it too early?
Actually, no, it is not too early. This is exactly when we would expect a major hurricane in the Atlantic. I always think of the real meat, the Atlantic hurricane season is half the year, goes from June 1st to November 30th. But when you look at the real red meat of the season, when it's really cranking, when we're getting big hurricanes, when we're getting ones that have made history in the United States, we're talking about a much narrower time frame. And I think of it as August 10th to October 20th. Most of the big hurricanes that have hit the United States or other parts of North America happen in that space. So we're August 10th today. We are right in that zone. We're right at the beginning of when we expect the big, intense hurricanes. This is the time of year we're entering what I call the danger zone. The next 6 weeks to 2 months, we all have to stay vigilant and really keep an eye on things. This is when it happens.
Yeah, because not all parts of hurricane season are created equal. We're already 2 months and change in here, but we feel like we have 7 months left to go as far as the amount of storms that we normally see. And while we're talking climatology, Josh, just real quick, I want to talk about August because it feels like we're starting to see a change in where and how these lows develop. And we start to see more of these Atlantic moments like we're seeing with Erin. And that's right about where we should be.
Exactly. So like you said, Carissa, the formation points kind of evolve. Early in the season, we had stuff forming very closer to North America in the Gulf, in the Caribbean. As we get into August, the formation zone kind of extends further east and we start really looking to Africa. And, as we get into peak season, which is like late August into early September, that's when we really get these long trackers coming off Africa, coming all the way across, and then sometimes hitting North America, sometimes not. Erin is maybe a little on the early side for this kind of African long tracker, but not unheard of. And in fact, last year we had Beryl, which was a long tracker coming off Africa, and that happened in July, which was super early. This is about on schedule. We really have to look, like I said, at Africa for those waves.
Folks at home, a little bit of a sneak peek talking about Erin's climatology and path, but we actually have a question from social media talking about the path, Kevin.
Yeah, we've got a question here from Matthew James Moon on Instagram. Josh, how wide is the gap? I think he's talking about the path here, that hurricanes can create their own weather environment, and he thinks that, Erin, if it's a major hurricane, would it continue west? Do you want to talk about that a little bit here, a little more?
Yeah, there's like a general sort of like a rule of thumb, common wisdom that a sort of weaker system is going to go more west, and if as a storm gets stronger, it's going to feel more of like a poleward pull. That often happens. So I've been seeing some folks on social media theorizing that because Erin is remaining weak, that might allow it to kind of get further west and in turn become more threatening to North America. Let's see how that plays out. But typically, as storms get stronger, they start to feel more of that poleward pull. Let's see what happens.
Well, and Josh, I kind of want to piggyback off of that too, because like I said, we gave folks at home a little bit of a sneak peek of a graphic talking about climatology of storms being north versus south. So we kind of talked about what might make it go a little bit west, but some folks are saying, hey, you know what, this one's a little bit north, it's got to be south to go. So talk about this graphic that you gave us, because it really gives some great insight onto Erin versus the climatological analysis of other storms throughout the past years.
Glad you asked about this. So I've seen some folks on social media saying, Erin is already too far north to reach the United States. It can't reach the US because it's too far north. So what they're doing is they're making a climatological argument for why it can't happen. A climatological meaning based on past precedent. And that's just not correct. This graphic shows all of the known Atlantic storms that passed within 70 miles of where Erin is now, showing where they went. And as you can see, the vast majority of them did just recurve harmlessly out into the Atlantic. But there's some notable exceptions, including big impacts in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States. The Chesapeake Potomac Hurricane of 1933, the Great Long Island Express Hurricane, also known as the New England Hurricane of 1938, Connie 1955, Gloria of 1985, which smashed Long Island, and Isabel, which hit the mid-Atlantic region. Those were all storms that passed where Erin is now. So there is precedent for storms passing near that region and then hitting the United States. But as you can see with the graphic, the vast majority of them did curve harmlessly out to sea. Hopefully that's what happens here.
And we'll be back with the human history book, known as Josh Morgerman, to talk more about Tropical Storm Erin and all things tropics. But we want to help get people out the door this morning, Josh, with a look at what's happening on radar. And for that, we want to hang out with meteorologist Tracy Anthony, who has been tracking everything that's been happening to start off the day, because I think Kevin put it best, Tracy, it's the summer of flooding that will never end.
It just is not ending. He's exactly right. And anytime we get these rain showers, whether they're in the morning or the afternoon, there's always a few isolated spots where flooding continues to be a huge concern. We're talking about Chattanooga, Tennessee, picking up close to 6.5 inches of rain throughout the day yesterday. So that is a all-time record for the second wettest day in that city's history. And we still have more rain showers that are going to be pushing across middle Tennessee and southern Tennessee here for the start of the day. So we do have some flash flood warnings that are in place. That's for Marion, Tennessee, and some flood watches that will remain in place through the second half of the day. But I'm a little nervous at where these storms are moving. You see they're starting to shift to the east, and Chattanooga right in the crosshairs. What makes these rain showers and storms so significant is their slow movement. So we're seeing these storms that are just kind of lingering in the same place. Now, if we talk about the northern end of this boundary, we have this cold front that's moving a little bit quicker. But where it's stalling out is here right across the Ohio and Tennessee valleys, and that's where we're having the most concern. But if we take a look across the nation, out west, things are calm and quiet. So Carissa will be talking a little bit more about what's going on out there coming up. Also talking about how this heat and humidity impacts mosquitoes this August.
I know. Now I'm itching. Thank you. I'm crawling. But we're no stranger to that pretty much everywhere across the country. It feels like mosquitoes are awful this time of year. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more on that. And I hope that everybody will, on our social platforms, let us know if they're seeing mosquitoes Mosquitoes. Let us know what it feels like where you are. Tracy,
yeah.
thanks so much for giving us a look at what's going on outside right now. But now let's get back to the tropics. We've got Hurricane Hunter Josh Morgerman, and of course I have Kevin. I put your names together.
Yeah, combine us.
That's high praise. We have Kevin Schneider here too, who is tracking everything that's going on with our viewers on social media this morning. What's everybody talking about to start off the day? Anything for Josh?
Yeah, we've got a question from Casper Gregory, one of our
faves.
one of our favorites out there. He's on YouTube. He's asking if Josh is going to have his go bag ready for Bermuda. Josh, what do you have planned maybe as we get into the next couple of weeks? Just a little tease.
Just in case.
No, Casper, no, it's a great question. If I had to pick one landmass that I think has the highest likelihood of getting, nailed by this thing, I would say Bermuda. That definitely some of the models show a direct hit by an intense hurricane. So I am keeping an eye on it. I do not like hunting hurricanes in Bermuda. It's a beautiful place, but it is not great hunting turf. For a variety of reasons, hard to get to, very remote, just a little dot in the middle of the Atlantic. But it looks like they definitely have to watch this thing. Absolutely.
And Josh, while we're talking about plans, I want to talk a little bit about the past too. I want to toot our horns a little bit because I know how much you love to look at the long range models and you love to look out far in advance because that's when we start to develop those trends on models. And I got to say, this time, exactly a week ago, you and I and Tracy and Taban were talking about Erin. We were talking about the models coming together on something, and they had something at the 12 to 15 day time period, and that's where we're at right now. We're seeing that come to fruition.
Absolutely. And I'm a big believer in long range models. Are they pinpoint accurate? No, of course they're not. But when you look at the long range models and you look at run after run and you compare the different models, you start to get a broad feeling of what's going to happen in the future. You start to get, like Carissa, to use your analogy again, they're like road signs in the distance. You can't read them yet, but you can kind of see what they're like saying. And I think it's very useful because it does give us this advance notice on what's happening. And we did see this coming, this big significant system that's going to be on the weather map for the next 10 days. And we're all going to be talking about it.
Yeah, you called it a Victorian novel. I called it an epic poem. This is one that's going to be with us for a while, and we are going to be tuning in for a while for that. But you can't get storm fatigue. You can't get worn out from this early.
Yeah, we see this a lot during severe weather season, too. And when we look at some of these lineups, a couple of days down the line, this is, that on steroids. But, when we're talking about tracking something for 2 weeks, I know it can be a little tough. For sure, mentally. Especially
when it has high stakes like a potential tropical system and could impact your life. But we want to talk about how weather is impacting your health. The meteorologist Tracy Anthony, as people are walking out the door this morning, I think in a lot of places they call it the air you can wear, where it just hits you like a ton of bricks right when you walk out the door.
Exactly, and it correlates with the flooding we've had this summer season. So our dew points have continued to be on the rise. What that means is there's a lot of moisture content in the environment. And once those dew points get into the 70s, that's tropical. So 50s, it starts to feel a little sticky. 60s, yeah, that's where you really do notice it. It starts to be really uncomfortable. 70s is tropical, and then 80s is oppressive, where it's just very, very difficult for your body to keep cool. And we have continued to have these heat index values that are so extremely high. It's very uncomfortable. And this is also impacting the mosquito population. So Josh and Carissa, we will have more on that coming up, but it impacts your health. And we'll have more on mosquitoes and West Nile as well.
Yeah, because that's all directly related. The humidity, the mosquito population, the tropics, all of us are watching each of these pieces. And even some social media friends shouting out about what the mosquitoes are like. And let me give you a preview. They're saying relentless. But we'll be back to talk more about that. We are going live on air here in just a second. So make sure you take a picture of that QR code and join us there. We'll be right back. All right, thanks so much for joining us here on Weather Nation. We are live here and we are talking on social media as well. So make sure you join us on your favorite platform. Follow us at Weather Nation on, help me out here with the list. We've got Twitter, we've got Facebook, we've got
can't even
Instagram,
keep
we've
track
got
of it.
YouTube, we got Rumble. We're out there on several other TikTok too.
I don't think we're on TikTok.
TikTok
I don't know.
too. I could use a Tic Tac, but that's because it's early. I did brush
Same.
my teeth this morning.
I just slammed a bunch of coffee, so I apologize.
That's the coffee talking. So Kevin and I are in the same boat, and we hope that you'll jump in that same boat with us. And you know who else is in the boat with us this morning? I don't know if he's had his coffee yet, though, Kevin.
Oh, I'm sure he has. I'm sure he has. He's mentioned it every time we've had him on this early in the morning. It's 8:20, I believe, in the Central Time Zone. A little early for a lot of folks out there.
That's, of course, we're talking about Josh Morgerman. Good morning, Josh.
There it is.
Shall we? Kevin,
Mine's
yours
on the
is
ground.
on the floor.
I kicked mine to the ground.
And so if you heard the
empty.
crash. But Josh, we're so grateful that you're here. We're not only sharing coffee together with you and our friends on social media, but we're also talking about something very important, and that's the tropics. And this week, Josh, with Tropical Storm Erin out there, it feels like the stakes just got a little higher. We just all kind of had to wake up in our seats.
Oh yeah, yeah. And listen, I mean, Aaron is like it's a 3 cup of coffee kind of storm. This is going to be. We've been talking about this. This is going to be a real endurance test in terms of talking about this thing because it's going to be on the weather map for a while. And as it creeps closer to North America, the stakes are going to increase. When you look at the National Hurricane Center's forecast track, and it does look like it gets perilously close to the Leeward Islands, to the U.S. Virgin Islands, to Puerto Rico. So we've definitely got to keep an eye on this thing as it approaches. Also, it's not looking so healthy right now, but that's going to change as it gets to a moister environment, as it gets over warmer water. This thing is going to become the season's first hurricane, and we're going to have something important on our hands to watch.
Absolutely, Josh. And folks can join us on our social media pages to ask their questions about the track and the intensity. And Kevin, folks are boisterous to start off the day.
That's all you need is a tropical troublemaker out there to stir up a lot of responses out there. We'll try to continue to filter through some of these. Of course, as always, we're posting ourselves on social media. What do you have? So this
Keeping things lighthearted here.
Full disclosure, there was an area of disturbed weather that the National Hurricane Center was monitoring not 24 hours ago with a 0% chance of development. Wanted to know what folks had no chance of doing out there. From @WeatherSchneider.
That's
I don't know who that is.
Definitely not you.
No
Kevin.
chance I'm remembering someone's name right after I meet him. That is the God's honest truth.
That is.
I am awful with names.
Very true. And as we were talking
What's your name again?
about, nice to meet you, Carissa Kloss. But it's lighthearted, but it's very interesting because we talk a lot about communicating tropical systems, Josh, to the public. We talked about it with Erin earlier when it's going all the way across the Atlantic. How do we keep people engaged? How do we communicate with them? And then there's also, like this week in the Gulf, the National Hurricane Center putting that area of potential development with 0 chance of developing, but it still has impacts. And I think that's where I'm going to get serious. I'm going to be mom here for a minute because I want people to know that it's not always about that path. It's not always about the X on the map. We've got another one of those unlikely chances of development outside of the Yucatan right now. It's all about the impacts, and that's what we want people to focus on.
100%. And let's talk about that weird area in the Gulf the last couple of days that we're talking about. So there was this thing off the west coast of Florida, and when you looked at the satellite imagery, you saw some outflow, which looked like a tropical cyclone. When you looked at the radar imagery, there was turning. It caused biblical rainfall on Sanibel Island and in the Cape Coral area. This thing had big impact. People were talking about it. The National Hurricane Center wouldn't mention it in the outlook. Then they did with 0% chance of developing. But Carissa, as you said, it wasn't going to become a tropical cyclone, but it was on the sort of tropical weather map, and the system did have impacts. This was probably the most memorable weather of the year for folks in that area, that Sanibel Island, Cape Coral area. This was a big impact system, never had a name, never was designated anything.
Moisture is always a game changer. And you know who just said that? Meteorologist Tracy Anthony, talking about dew points and talking about all of the different factors that tropical moisture can have outside of the tropics. And that was such a great example in Florida. Thank you so much, Josh. But I want to bring in Tracy because that humidity, that tropical moisture is influencing not just the tropics, but it's going all the way to the northern parts of the U.S. too.
You know, and coming from Minnesota, we would always say the mosquito was the state bird. And then I moved down to Florida and they say the same thing. So I'm kind of thinking that across the U.S., the state bird of every state is the mosquito. But this time of year, especially in August, it's the warm summer days that keep mosquitoes awake and biting. So as the temperature stays warm and mild throughout the overnights, and we know the overnight temperatures are a reflection typically of where those dew points are, these mosquitoes stay awake longer. Now, we've also had more moisture because there's been that tropical moisture in the atmosphere that's been ringing out, that's been causing a lot of flooding. Well, that's breeding ground for these mosquitoes. And when it's warm and soggy, mosquitoes can go from larvae to biting adults in 7 to 10 days. So it speeds up their life cycle as well. And you guys, that is why the mosquitoes this year seem so bad, because we are dealing with just kind of that soggy tropical environment.
Yeah. And Josh, I'm sure it's a soggy tropical environment. Is it the Mississippi state bird too?
Yeah, I've never heard that, but that is perfect. And I'm gonna say yes, the Mississippi mosquitoes are worse. And like, I'm not even gonna argue about this. They are out of control here.
I know.
So.
Well, and it's funny, here in Denver, we don't have a lot of humidity, but I swear there are fewer of them, but they are 10 times bigger. But we're going to be talking a lot more about this and having some more fun with Josh Morgerman, with Tracy Anthony, with Kevin Schneider on our social media platforms. So stay with us. Make sure you log on and interact with our meteorologists. All right, we're live on social media, everybody. We're sticking with you. We've got Josh Morgerman, who is here. And Josh, we were just talking and joking. And Kevin, anybody online about those mosquitoes commiserating with us?
Yes, Pest Hunter Outdoors, another one of our favorites out there, is talking about the mosquitoes in southeast Texas. Relentless was the word he used, down into right around sunset. They say that's always going to be the worst time of it.
Yeah, well, and you know what, Josh, probably if it's too personal of a question, you don't have to answer. There are some people that get bit up. That's the other thing that's crazy to me is me and my daughter, if we think about mosquitoes too hard, we have 7 bug bites. If we look at my son and my husband, it's like they never were outside. Which one are you?
Your son and husband. I'm one of those people. I'll get bit a little bit, but you know, I have my front porch in Mississippi. I sit out on it at night in that heat and humidity. And for some reason, I don't know if it's like the pH balance of my blood or whatever it is. I've heard all kinds of theories, but I don't get bit a whole lot.
All right, Josh, we have some more things to talk about with Tropical Storm Erin. So frankly, I just can't handle mosquitoes anymore, so I'm ready to move on. So instead, let's talk
buzz
about,
here.
Yeah, right, buzz off mosquitoes. Thank you very much. But Josh, you stay.
Not Josh.
Not Josh. But as we talk about Tropical Storm Erin, something I want to talk about with you, Josh, is the trends that you've been noticing with the models. And Kevin, are people wondering anything about that, because that can have a big impact on path?
Yeah, on YouTube, Casper Gregory's asking about the new Euro, the Google AI models being publicly available, Josh. And you kind of wanted to know what everyone's thoughts were on the solutions, and if Josh includes the DeepMind model into his analysis. What do you think there, Josh?
Yeah, I do actually. I've been using this sort of new models, incorporating them into, what I'm looking at. Just like other analysts, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to kind of get a consensus. Let's look at all the models. Let's see what's the kind of average between them, and try to understand the biases of each model. But those new AI models and stuff are helpful, and I do absolutely look at them. And I would say, bringing it back to Erin, there is sort of a building consensus. If you just sort of take the bulk of all the models, it does look like it kind of field goals Erin between all the populated land masses. So, and this is optimistic, but north of the Caribbean islands, east of Bermuda, between the U.S. and east of the Bahamas, between the U.S. and Bermuda, and then south of Atlantic Canada. That's an ideal track, and because it would kind of miss all the populated land masses. That's what the models are suggesting now. But I should point out that this is still more than 5 days out. The chessboard, the pieces are going to move around, and that can absolutely change. And in particular, I want to say that folks in the Leeward Islands, in Puerto Rico, in the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, those areas in particular are the ones who need to watch this closest right now because they're the closest to this approaching storm.
And that's when we're expecting it to bump up in intensity, Josh, is right as the kick is up, and hopefully it's good, to use your field goal analogy. But as we see it moving through, it's going to kind of overcome that dry air. And I want to bring in Kevin because then we have to talk about sea surface temperatures too.
Yeah, and we've got Lois on YouTube asking if Erin's lowered the sea surface temperatures where it's at, which we're already kind of low already, way out into the eastern Atlantic there, Josh.
Yeah, there's always going to be, whenever a hurricane or a tropical storm passes over the ocean, it does what's called upwelling. It churns the water. The cooler water from underneath comes up to the surface. So there's some upwelling. But Erin's been moving at a pretty good clip. So the upwelling hasn't been too much. And I don't think it's going to have any big impact on the activity that comes behind it. And it looks like we might have a little bit of a wave train. One other thing I want to point out real quick is the computer models some of them are suggesting some other sort of potential threats coming on the heels of Erin. So I think we're going to be busy even as Erin moves into and then out of the picture eventually.
Yeah, because not all of these systems exist in a vacuum. They impact each other even long after they're gone. All right, we've got one more last question for you, Josh. And I think I know the answer to this one, but I'm still interested to hear what you're going to say. At WX Storms 2011 on X wants to know, any chance you'll hang up your hurricane hat and hunt tornadoes in the Midwest one day?
Absolutely not. No, I am faithful in my hurricanes. And that's all. I believe in being good at one thing and just focusing on it. And for me, it's my life passion is hurricanes.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to shout out our field correspondent, Eric Fox. He he maybe piqued your interest, or I know he at least has a standing invitation for you to ride shotgun.
No, he does. And I'm going to make a confession. We had some major tornado warnings just north of me in Mississippi this year and last year. And I did actually get in the car and drive a little north to see if I could see anything. So I guess I technically did chase.
So what
tornadoes.
You're saying is the next time there's a severe weather threat in Mississippi, I'm going to call you and you're going to be my field correspondent for that. Is that what I heard?
We'll talk about it.
Well, hey, you know what? To be fair, you did cover snow for us on the coast.
Yeah. Oh, that was embarrassing. I was embarrassed to do that. But listen, it was a favor for you guys. I expected a nice prime rib dinner when I come to Denver for doing that, for embarrassing myself like that.
You know what? If you can get us a tornado, then I will absolutely live up to buying you that prime rib dinner. Thank you so much, Josh Morgerman, for joining us this morning live here on Weather Nation. He's answering all those questions from our social media viewers too. Josh, we hope you have a great day. And Kevin, now we're kind of switch gears a little bit because we talked a lot about the tropics. That's obviously, I would say, our top story with Erin just kind of crawling across the Atlantic. But we have so many more things to talk about across the country with your top stories. Yeah, we're going to be talking about a lot of the flooding that's been going on here stateside here. When we talk about, it started in Milwaukee coming out of this weekend. And then it went into places, further south and east, and even as recently as yesterday, talking about Chattanooga and getting up around Chicago. So this has been something that's been going for a while now, too. Well, and also, as you look at some of the scenes out of Wisconsin with that historic rainfall Saturday night into Sunday morning, you talked about it being the summer of flooding. The Weather Prediction Center, looking at all of the flash flood warnings that were issued in the month of July, it was the most on record. So if it feels like there's been a lot of flooding, you're not wrong. This kind of scene, it feels like it's happening more and more. Yeah, and I mean, more and more is, unfortunately something that we've had to deal with way too much.
when I looked at some of the totals early Sunday morning when we were looking down in Milwaukee, I had to do a double check.
Right, because you're
Make
like,
sure
that's not Louisiana.
that's not right. There's no way that Milwaukee. What are you talking about? That is way too much rain. Sure enough, yeah, there were multiple places reporting that much rain. So incredible stuff out of Wisconsin.
Yeah, anywhere on this map that you see that kind of grayish purple color, that's where 9-10 inches or more fell. So a very soggy forecast for southern Wisconsin over the last couple of days. And I also want to make sure that everybody knows in the next few days, we still have those waves of energy over the northern tier of the U.S. So especially by day 3. So by Friday, we could start talking about more rainfall in the same spots around Madison and Milwaukee.
Yeah, far from being out of the woods just yet here. Is hopefully the flooding threats maybe a little bit lower with a little bit more progressive storms here over the next couple of days.
All right, let's move on to our next top story. We're talking about fires because that has been another thing that's just so destructive to watch. And the visuals with this were incredible. And it's also sending a ton of smoke into the atmosphere. And air quality has been diminished. And the folks at the Cleveland Clinic, the doctors there, have really broken down all of the potential health impacts that it can have on your body.
As those levels creep up and as the air quality gets worse and worse, even people who don't have lung problems can start to cough, they can feel a little short of breath, you can feel like your nose is running, like you might have allergies, and at really high levels it can make you feel really short of breath, even when you don't have lung problems. So basically the worse the air quality gets, the more we all feel it.
Yeah, and when you look at these videos, how dense that smoke is, it's funny. There's a couple of different air quality index levels, and if it's bad for sensitive groups, me and my daughter, we have asthma, and so the second we wake up, we immediately start coughing. We know air quality is bad today. Yep.
Yeah, and I think it's important for a lot of folks to remember is kind of the air quality scale. It's based on numbers, right? And a lot of those numbers don't mean anything to anybody unless you have asthma or you have some sort of pre-existing condition out there. We've got the leaf fire to worry about here into the city of Denver. That's out on the western slope. That thing continues to kind of tick down with the containment on that. That's always worrying us. And last week maybe I had a little light illness. But I had something going on with all that wildfire smoke. I was not feeling right.
Yeah, but honestly, and the kids are going back to school, so it's one of those things, the germs are out there, you get that cold, and then you get the wildfire smoke just making it 10 times worse. So obviously we're tracking the air quality, we're tracking those fires. As you mentioned, the leaf fire. We have several others in Arizona, in Nevada, and California that we're going to be keeping an eye on here on Weather Nation. We're also talking about extreme humidity, and that not only has an impact on your forecast, but listen, can we get the sound on this? Maybe.
I hope not.
I know you don't. You don't
because
really
you're going to hear it
want
for 3 weeks.
This was from the end of July, to be fair, but I want to bring in meteorologist Tracy Anthony because this is all interconnected. This is all coming together. When you see all of that moisture in the atmosphere, that really can have a major impact on what the mosquitoes are doing, Tracy, and how they impact your day-to-day life, because this matters to a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's not just the day-to-day life, then we start talking about other topics like West Nile and, how it impacts our health. And it can be a domino effect of how everything is correlated. So with the heightened amount of moisture and you get more mosquitoes, so now we have a greater number of mosquitoes, but then we also have a greater chance for mosquitoes to spread viruses like West Nile. So that can continue to be an issue. I want to get back to a few things here. Let's see if we can get back to it. But with West Nile, the virus circulates between birds and mosquitoes. So mosquitoes get it from birds, then mosquitoes pass it to humans. Now, when the temperatures are warm, when we're talking about temperatures 85 to 90 degrees, it cuts the incubation period of mosquitoes in half, meaning the mosquito can spread it to humans in 5 days instead of 10. And oftentimes when temperatures are that warm, birds are weaker and they don't move as quickly, so more mosquitoes are biting birds. So Kevin, it's all a domino effect, and it all starts with the weather.
Yeah, you'd be shocked at how much it affects. Thanks, Tracy. And speaking of flying, Wanted to touch on that travel forecast real quick. And again, it looks like so far so good. We are watching some of these showers and thunderstorms northeast, southeast, and back down toward DFW. That is always going to be something gives us a little pause for concern. A lot like some of those mosquitoes out there, that horrifying sound that I'm now going to hear for the next 3 weeks coming out of Minnesota. Hey, keep it here. We've got to go back on live TV. If you don't have any of our apps, scan that QR code real quick, real quick. We've got a couple of seconds left.
All right, thanks so much for joining us here on Weather Nation as we are live on air and online talking about all of your top stories. I'm meteorologist Carissa Kloss. We're speaking with meteorologist Tracy Anthony in just a bit, and my left-hand man, meteorologist, I know, is it sad you know what, I almost failed my driver's
Shout out
test.
Dylan.
Because the person who was administering the driver's test said, take a left up here. And I went click, 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 turned on my right blinker
right.
and turned the wrong way. Anyway.
That shouldn't fail you.
Kevin Schneider, talking top stories. You just talked travel on our social media platforms. If you want to interact with our meteorologists, make sure you follow us at Weather Nation on all of our platforms, X, Facebook, Instagram, Rumble, YouTube. We're on all of those right now, and we're so glad you joined us here on air. But there, we're creating a community and a sense of the ability to talk to us and ask your questions, because I think maybe one of the number one questions, Kevin, is the summer heat and humidity ever going to end?
When are we going to get to fall? Folks, I'm telling you right now, it will sneak up on you. It does every year without relent out there. So, yeah, be patient. Be patient. The heat and humidity will have its end. Eventually.
I have proof, Kevin.
Just not this week.
I have proof. First, let's talk about the heat. Let's talk about the temperatures, because in Washington, they've seen some extremely warm conditions, but peep this tree in Leavenworth, Washington. Is it turning? Is it turning? Maybe.
I'm telling you, me and Rob almost came to blows on Sunday. We saw that tree. We're like, what? We're not arborists, obviously, or whatever the tree fairing line of work is. I think arborist. I don't know. Regardless, we saw the change in color. Wondered what was going on here. Wanted to bring in Tracy Anthony, who's a little more of an arborist than we are here sitting in the command center.
Or at least studied really hard for this pop quiz as kids go back to school.
Surprise.
You know, we've got this. We've got some graphics, so we're going to roll with it. You know, we deal with, the leaves changing, and it all has to do with temperature fluctuations and the amount of moisture in the plant. So it really depends on where the drought monitor is. And you can see for the Northwest, we do have some extreme drought areas. So that can oftentimes impact how the color of the leaves are changing. So when we have a little bit more soil moisture, if it's very dry, we will have the leaves changing on the earlier side. When the foliage is wet, it's going to take a little bit more time. So that's why we're starting to see some of those leaves changing in some of those areas across the Northwest. Now, when it comes to temperature, it depends on, obviously, cold versus warm. When it's colder, you're going to start to see those leaves changing earlier. And then when it's warmer, it is going to take a little bit more time. However, kind of the key to this is the fluctuation of your daytime heat and your overnight low. So if you have overnight temperatures dropping below freezing, but you warm up throughout the day, that's when oftentimes you can see changes happening a little bit quicker. So once again, another thing that is heavily impacted by the weather, and you know what? I was going to guess this. I knew fall was going to be most people's favorite season, because it's mine too.
Would have been second guess. That would have been my second guess. That's runner up for me, silver medal.
Yeah, I probably would have guessed fall too, but there are several reasons, and people have been letting us know what they think. One of my favorite reasons, I don't know, that's what I was looking at on my phone. I'm getting the first day of school pictures from my husband.
How's this for on-air television? Here's my phone.
Yeah, here's my phone. My kids are literally getting ready for school, and they are going off to their first day, but I have to agree also with Jerry. Nothing beats a pumpkin spice latte.
I love those too.
Once upon a time, I got into a big pumpkin spice fad at an old job and bought way too much of it.
You OD'd.
I'm good for like maybe the rest of my
What was the bill?
life.
What was the monthly bill?
Oh,
for
it
the
was like
seasonal?
$15 or something. It was just oatmeal and pastries and of course the coffee. But
Yeah.
you know, the coffee I can keep doing. The rest of that stuff, I'm good.
All right, I'll offer a counterpoint here. At Suffer for Snakes, we'll unpack that handle a little
Good
bit
luck.
later. But I live in Southern California. Winter is best because that's the time we actually get rain. Not a lot of rain, but rain nonetheless. They need the wet season, obviously, in California. It is the most important thing, their bread and butter. Got another one from Don Freeman who said, all right, you know what? Let's just slow down all this fall talk. And I don't know. I don't know where I am this year because I love that the kids are going back to school and love that it's getting cooler. But I don't know that I'm ready for summer to end.
You know, in Florida too, you got to fight. I love how the weather changes in the fall, but that's when everybody comes back down to Florida and the traffic gets horrendous. So the summer
Oh,
is
yeah.
kind of nice. You battle the heat, but you don't battle the traffic. So there's kind of a give and take here.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Tracy, we're going to be checking in with you in a little bit on social media, so I hope everybody hangs out with us and stays with us because we're going to be doing some more forecasting. But Kevin, we want to take a moment and shout out a pretty cool video from a very cool viewer.
Yeah, look at this out of Avon Beach here as we get into North Carolina, the old Tar Heel state. Yeah, what do you think's underneath that rainbow? It's not that house. I'm betting.
It's a pumpkin spice latte.
That's not my pot of gold right now. I can guarantee you that. Thanks to at Beach OBX Girl, one of our favorites on social media. Hey, want to kind of focus in on Avon Beach here as we get into that extended forecast. We've got a lot of tropical moisture down in these parts. Again, shocker, right? Like shocker, someone like me getting into pumpkin spice stuff out there. Avon Beach, though, yeah, we've got some showers and thunderstorms out there. Look at those overnight lows in the upper 70s. Kind of gives you an idea just how much moisture we're working with. But yeah, we've got to wring out some rain, unfortunately, over the next couple of days. Once we get past Friday, I think we're done with the rain, it looks like here as we get toward this weekend. Maybe done with some of the rainbows as well. Hey, we're headed over to social media. Follow us at WeatherNation. We'll be interacting with you here over the next couple of minutes.
And Kevin, one of the things that we're going to be interacting about and diving in deeper to is that southeast forecast because that has been relentless with the amount of moisture that we've seen, very tropical in nature. But before we get to that, we want to take a moment and make sure that everybody joining us now on social media gets their shout outs, gets their flowers. Like I said, my kids, I've been checking in because they are getting ready for school and they're heading out the door this morning. That's a big topic on everybody's mind. What else are people talking about early today?
Well, we're talking about mosquitoes now. For better or worse, we might be doing that
That was
forever
our own
now.
fault.
Sorry. Hey, Pest Hunter Outdoors said when they were in Arizona, mosquitoes never touched them, but since they moved to Southeast Texas, it became a buffet. Hate it how that happens.
Nope.
Yeah, that's how that's going to go oftentimes down in Southeast Texas.
You know what? If I didn't love the bald eagle so much, I would joke about making it not just the state bird of Florida, like Tracy said, or the state bird of Minnesota. I would say, let's make it the national bird. But you know what? How about we'll just go with the national pest?
It is a pest.
It
It
is
is a pest, I guarantee you that. It's
And-
not the state bird of Alabama, though. We know that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, or the state bird of Mississippi because Josh Morgerman just refused earlier to do it, to acknowledge that, even though he does find a few while he's porch sitting outside.
Oh,
But
yeah, I'm sure.
If you were porch sitting anywhere across the southeast in the last couple of weeks, it's been very, very stormy. And hold your breath, Kevin, because this is the power of lightning. If you're not standing by your screen, make sure you come over because a lightning strike hit a power box of some kind in South Carolina. This was caught on a police department dash cam. And what's crazy to me about this one is the fact that you see the fire on one side of the street, but you also see that massive flash on the other because that's where the current went through. Tracy, are you seeing this too? It's nuts.
Yeah, you know, and you always think, oh, lightning, it's never going to happen to me or it's never going to impact where I am, but you see it and then it travels down the power line You know, that lightning is so powerful and spreads so fast. That's why we always say when thunder roars, go indoors. And we're going to have more thunderstorm activity across the southeast. The last 2 days, the rainfall totals have been significant. And we've been talking a lot this morning about Chattanooga because they completely smashed their old rainfall record for August 12th, picking up 6.42 inches of rain. The previous record was under 2 inches. Now, this daily rainfall is an all-time daily record for the second wettest day in Chattanooga history since record keeping began. So I think what takes the cake was 9 inches of rain, but nonetheless, they had major flooding. We still have flood watches that are in place, and we have some rain showers and storms that are continuing to impact that area for mid to late morning. So it's this surge of tropical moisture that's in the atmosphere that these storms are wringing out. As these storms develop and build into the atmosphere, it just takes that column of air and wrings out all of that moisture. Think of it like a washcloth just being wrung out. So a very primed environment that's going to continue over the next couple of afternoons. But today we're really watching areas like Chattanooga, Nashville, Johnson City for more flooding potential. So you guys, this is going to be an ongoing situation, and to wrap it all together, it's not going to make the mosquito situation any better here across the southeast.
Get out of here with that.
Yeah.
Get out of here
All
with
that
that.
humidity.
You're welcome for the fun facts, okay?
Yeah, right. Tracy just bringing the joy,
Yeah.
bringing the sunshine from West Palm Beach, Florida this morning. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Hey, and Tracy, we did get one question. It kind of made me think of you. On social media, on X, PJP Jr. _ 9861. Not really weather. Well, I guess I misspoke. It's not a
weather
question.
related at all.
It's a comment, and it made me think of you and us jamming in the mornings here. Someone wants to know if we've got any sort of bumper music that we all use or a playlist of it somewhere. I don't know. I don't think so.
You know what? We get this question so much on our feedback. They're like, "Man, I love that song,"
slaps.
or it gets stuck in their head and it
Slaps.
becomes an earworm, and then it goes the other way, and they're like, "Would you please never use that song again?"
You know what? Can we, I don't know, Kevin, can we say it? I don't know if we can endorse anything, but we like the long
There's
playlist. Have
There's
have
our
lots
control.
of
From
different
the two
songs in it.
friends. From the two friends. We'll say it that
Yes,
way. I know
there
we're
you
on
go.
the social media, but you know they've got an interesting name for all their mixes out there. That is for sure. That is our jam, as well as WeatherNation. We love our music.
Thanks for jamming
Gets
with
you
us
pumped.
this morning. All right. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you to everyone that joined us on social media and on air here on Weather Nation. We're so grateful. Make sure you stay with us. You can always ask your questions. Follow us at Weather Nation on all social media platforms. Just use that QR code on your screen. Download our app on your iPhone, on your Android device, and make sure you stick with us because we've got the tropics and many more active top weather stories to talk about here on Weather Nation.